The cafeteria was noisy, filled with students laughing, chatting, and clattering their trays. Among them, sitting at a corner table, was Alina, a 17-year-old girl with tired eyes and a slightly swollen belly. She kept her head down, pushing her food around her plate, ignoring the whispers and stares from the other students. From across the room, a loud, mocking voice cut through the chatter. "Hey, look! The charity case is here," smirked Ryan, a rich, arrogant kid who thrived on making others feel small. His mother, Mrs. Brooks, was the head of the school board, which meant Ryan got away with almost anything. Alina stiffened but didn't respond. She had learned that silence was sometimes the best armor. Ryan wasn't done. He turned to his group of friends, making sure his voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "I wonder who the father is this time? Or does she even know?" His friends burst into laughter, their cruel eyes watching Alina for a reaction. At that moment, the cafeteria doors swung open and Mrs. Brooks herself walked in. Alina's heart pounded. Maybe, just maybe, an adult would finally step in and stop this. But instead, Mrs. Brooks walked straight to Ryan's table, ruffled his hair, and laughed along with the others. "Ryan, honey, don't be too harsh on her," she said with a smirk. "She's already dealing with enough consequences, isn't she?" Alina felt her face burn with humiliation. A lump formed in her throat, but she refused to let them see her cry. Clutching her tray, she stood up and walked toward the exit. Just as she reached the door, a voice stopped her. "You don't deserve this." She turned and saw someone she least expected, Nathan. He wasn't exactly a friend, but he wasn't one of Ryan's goons either. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something different from the rest. Alina hesitated. People didn't usually stand up for her, and she had no idea why Nathan, of all people, would. But before she could say anything, Ryan scoffed. "What, Nathan? Feeling sorry for her? Maybe you're the father." Laughter erupted again, but this time, Nathan's fists clenched. His jaw tightened. Alina saw it, the split second before everything changed. And in that moment, she knew this wasn't over. The tension in the cafeteria was thick. Alina could feel all eyes on her, waiting to see what she would do. But she wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Without a word, she turned and walked out, her hands gripping the straps of her backpack so tightly her knuckles turned white. Nathan, however, didn't move. He was still standing there, staring at Ryan with a look that was dangerously close to fury. "Say that again." Nathan's voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge to it that made even Ryan hesitate for a second. Ryan smirked, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. "Relax, man. Just having some fun." Nathan took a step closer. "Fun?" His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with something else. "You think humiliating her is fun?" Mrs. Brooks placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder and laughed. "Oh, come on, Nathan. No need to get all worked up over a girl like her. She made her choices. She should learn to deal with them." Nathan's jaw tightened. "And you, as an adult, should know better than to encourage this garbage." Gasps rippled through the cafeteria. No one ever spoke to Mrs. Brooks like that. Ryan stood up, his face twisting with anger. "You better watch it." Nathan wasn't listening anymore. He turned on his heel and strode out of the cafeteria, his fists still clenched. Meanwhile, Alina had made it outside, breathing in the cool air, trying to keep herself together. But the lump in her throat wouldn't go away. She leaned against the wall, squeezing her eyes shut. "Hey!" She looked up and saw Nathan standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching her. "You didn't have to do that," she muttered, wiping at her face. "Yeah, I did," he said simply. Silence stretched between them. Alina wasn't used to kindness, especially not from someone like him. "Why?" she finally asked. Nathan hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "Because I know what it's like to be judged for something that isn't anyone else's business." Alina frowned. "What do you mean?" But before he could answer, a car pulled up in front of the school. A sleek, black SUV. The door opened and a man stepped out, a man Alina hadn't seen in years. Her heartbeat stuttered. Nathan noticed the change in her expression. Alina? Who is that? She couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. Because the man standing in front of her was someone she had prayed never to see again. Her father. Alina's entire body tensed. Her grip on her backpack tightened as her father stepped forward, his sharp eyes scanning her from head to toe. He looked exactly the same, cold, controlled, and calculating. Alina, his voice was deep, steady, almost rehearsed. Get in the car. She doesn't want to go with you. Daniel barely glanced at him, his presence alone radiating authority. Do you even have a future? A plan? Or do you just stand around defending lost causes? Nathan took a slow breath, his knuckles white. I don't need to explain myself to you. Daniel's smirk faded. Alina, you're coming with me, whether you like it or not. Panic surged through her veins. I'm not going anywhere. I have legal guardianship, Daniel said smoothly. Your mother gave it up. Everything inside Alina went cold. You're lying. But deep down, she knew he wasn't. Nathan stepped in front of her. She's not going with you. Daniel's expression darkened. This isn't your fight, boy. Nathan didn't flinch. It is now. And in that moment, Alina realized something. She wasn't alone anymore. But this was far from over. Alina's head spun. Her mother had given up guardianship? No, that couldn't be true. She would have told her. She would have, wouldn't she? Daniel's cold stare locked onto her, daring her to question him. He wasn't the type to bluff. If he said he had legal control over her, then he probably did. Nathan was still standing in front of her, tense, ready to fight if it came to that. But Alina knew this wasn't a fight they could win with words or fists. This was something much bigger. Alina, Daniel said again, voice steady. Get in the car. No, the word came out stronger this time. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. You think you have a choice? Nathan scoffed. She does. She's not a kid, and she sure as hell doesn't need you showing up now like you care. Daniel exhaled through his nose, clearly losing patience. You don't know anything about the situation. Nathan's jaw tightened. I know enough. Alina took a slow breath, forcing herself to think. If her mother had really given up guardianship, why hadn't she told her? Why would she? And then, suddenly, it clicked. The late-night phone calls. The extra shifts at work. The exhaustion in her mother's eyes. Money. Daniel had bought her mother out. Alina's stomach turned. She had trusted her, believed in her. And yet, just like that, she had been sold off to a man who had abandoned her years ago. Her voice was eerily calm when she spoke. How much did you pay her? Daniel blinked, then smirked. What does it matter? Nathan's head snapped toward Alina. Wait, you think he? I don't think, Alina said quietly. I know. She looked her father dead in the eyes. She didn't give me up. You bought me. Daniel's smirk faltered for the briefest second before he recovered. I did what was necessary. Alina shook her head. No, you did what you always do. You controlled the situation. You used your money to get what you wanted without caring what anyone else felt. Daniel sighed, as if exhausted by the conversation. Enough of this. You're coming with me, whether you like it or not. He stepped forward, but before he could grab her arm, Nathan moved. Fast. His hand shot out, gripping Daniel's wrist in a way that sent a very clear message. Back off. For the first time, Daniel actually looked at Nathan. Really looked at him. Nathan's voice was quiet, but firm. She said no. Daniel studied him for a long moment, then exhaled sharply and pulled his arm back. Fine. His voice was calm, but there was a sharpness underneath it. You want to make this difficult? Go ahead. But understand this, Alina, you will come with me. The law is on my side. Alina refused to let him see her fear. We'll see about that. Daniel glanced at Nathan one last time before stepping back toward his car. Stay away from her, he warned. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. Nathan didn't move. Neither do you. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He got into the SUV, slammed the door shut, and drove off. The moment he was gone, Alina felt her knees go weak. She didn't realize how hard she was shaking until Nathan gently touched her shoulder. Hey, he said quietly. You okay? She let out a bitter laugh. Not even close. Nathan hesitated, then said, Come on, let's get out of here. Alina didn't argue, because deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. Alina and Nathan walked in silence, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on them like a storm cloud ready to burst. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything. Her mother had sold her out. Her father had come back, not for her, but to control her. And now, legally, she had no way to fight him. She was trapped. Nathan must have sensed her thoughts because he suddenly said, We'll figure something out. She stopped walking and looked at him. How? He has money. Power. He owns people, Nathan. I can't fight him. Nathan's eyes darkened. Then we don't fight fair. Alina let out a humorless chuckle. And what does that mean? He hesitated, as if debating whether to tell her something. Then he ran a hand through his hair and exhaled. I know people. She frowned. What kind of people? The kind who don't care about power or money, he said simply. The kind who know how to get information on guys like him. The kind who can find things even he doesn't want getting out. Alina stared at him. Nathan, what are you saying? Nathan looked away for a moment, his jaw tightening. Then he said, Your father isn't as clean as he pretends to be. Something in his voice made her blood run cold. How do you know that? Nathan hesitated again, but this time, she saw it, the flicker of something personal in his eyes. And suddenly, she realized the truth. This isn't just about me, is it? She whispered. Nathan's expression hardened, but he didn't deny it. Let's just say, I've seen what men like him do to people who can't fight back. Alina's pulse pounded in her ears. There was more to Nathan than she had ever realized. He wasn't just defending her because he felt bad for her. He had his own reasons, and she needed to know what they were. Nathan, she said carefully. What did he do? Nathan looked away, staring at the ground. Not him, he muttered. Someone like him. Alina's stomach twisted. Your dad. Nathan's jaw clenched. Not exactly. He exhaled, then finally looked back at her. Let's just say, I know what it's like to have someone take everything from you. Alina's throat tightened. She had always thought of Nathan as the guy who stayed on the sidelines, the guy who never got involved in drama. But now, she was realizing something. Nathan wasn't on the sidelines. He was in a battle of his own. Before she could say anything, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting another message from her father. But it wasn't. It was from her mother. Mom, Alina, we need to talk. Please. I didn't have a choice. Alina stared at the message, anger and betrayal boiling inside her. No choice? No. Her mother had made a choice. She had chosen him. Nathan noticed the look on her face. Your mom. She nodded, gripping the phone so tightly her fingers ached. She wants to talk. Nathan was quiet for a moment, then said, Do you want to hear her out? Alina didn't know. But deep down, she knew one thing. She needed answers. Alina sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. Her mother's message burned into her mind. I didn't have a choice. She wanted to ignore it. She wanted to pretend that her mother had already made her decision, that there was nothing left to say. But deep down, a small, desperate part of her still wanted to believe there was another explanation, something, anything that could make this betrayal hurt less. Nathan sat in the chair across from her, arms crossed. So, are you gonna call her? Alina exhaled sharply. I don't know. Nathan leaned forward. Then let me ask you this. If you don't, will you regret it? She bit her lip. That was the problem. She wasn't sure. Finally, she pressed the call button. The phone rang twice before her mother answered. Alina, her voice was breathless, like she had been waiting for this moment. Alina swallowed the lump in her throat. Why did you do it? Silence. Then, a heavy sigh. Sweetheart, you don't understand. Then make me understand. Alina snapped. Because from where I'm standing, you sold me off to a man who abandoned us years ago. What part of that am I not getting? Her mother's voice cracked. I was out of options. Alina's grip on the phone tightened. No, you weren't. You chose to give up on me. It wasn't like that. Her mother sounded exhausted. I was drowning in debt, Alina. Rent was months overdue. The hospital bills, Alina froze. Hospital bills? A long silence stretched between them. Then her mother whispered, I'm sick, Alina. The room seemed to tilt. What? I didn't want to tell you like this, her mother said, her voice raw. But I have cancer. Stage 3. Alina felt like she had been punched in the stomach. You're lying. Her mother let out a broken laugh. I wish I was. Alina's mind raced. No, this couldn't be happening. First, her father. Now this? She sucked in a shaky breath. So, you gave me away because you're dying? I gave you away because I thought I was protecting you, her mother said softly. Daniel has money, connections. I thought, maybe he could give you the life I couldn't. Alina pressed her fingers against her temples, trying to think. It made sense. In the most twisted, heartbreaking way, it made sense. But it didn't make it right. Tears burned her eyes. You should have told me. I know, her mother whispered. But I was scared. And I'm sorry. Alina sat there, numb, her mind torn between anger and grief. Then, Nathan's voice broke through the silence. Alina, she blinked, suddenly remembering he was still there. He watched her carefully, concern written all over his face. She turned back to the phone. I need time. Her mother's breath hitched. I understand. Then, after a long pause, she added, just be careful, sweetheart. Your father isn't who he pretends to be. Alina's blood ran cold. What does that mean? But before her mother could answer, the call cut off. Alina stared at the phone, her pulse hammering. She hung up. Nathan frowned. Or someone made her. A chill ran down Alina's spine. Something wasn't right, and she was about to find out exactly what. Alina's hands trembled as she stared at her phone screen. The call had ended too abruptly. It wasn't normal. Something felt off. Nathan must have noticed the shift in her expression because he leaned in. What exactly did she say before the call dropped? Alina swallowed hard. She said my father isn't who he pretends to be. Nathan's jaw tightened. Then the call cuts out? That's not a coincidence. Alina's pulse quickened. You think something happened to her? I think, Nathan said carefully, that we can't trust your father. And if your mom knows something, she might be in danger. Alina shot up from the bed, panic flooding her system. I have to go to her. Nathan grabbed her wrist gently but firmly. Alina, wait. We don't know what we're walking into. I don't care, she snapped, yanking her arm away. She's sick, Nathan. And now, after everything, I don't even know if she's safe. Nathan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Okay, but if we're going, we're doing this smart. Alina nodded, already grabbing her jacket. Fine, but I'm not waiting. The drive to her mother's apartment felt like an eternity. Alina's thoughts raced with worst-case scenarios. Had Daniel found out she was talking to her? Had he threatened her? How'd he know? She couldn't think like that. As soon as they reached the apartment complex, Alina rushed to the door. She knocked, then pounded when there was no answer. Mom, open up. Nothing. Her chest tightened. Mom. Nathan stepped beside her, then reached for the doorknob. It turned. Unlocked. Alina and Nathan exchanged a look before he slowly pushed the door open. The apartment was dark. Too quiet. Alina stepped inside, her heart hammering. Mom? Silence. Then, a faint sound. A rustling. From the bedroom. Nathan moved in front of her instinctively, stepping toward the noise. He pushed the bedroom door open and froze. Alina looked over his shoulder and felt her stomach drop. The room was ransacked. Drawers pulled open, clothes thrown everywhere. The mattress was half off the bed frame. Papers were scattered across the floor. And her mother was gone. Alina's breath came in short, panicked gasps. No, 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 no. Nathan turned to her. She's not here. Alina stepped forward, her head spinning. She had just spoken to her. She was just here. Then she noticed something on the floor. A piece of paper. No, a letter. She picked it up, her hands shaking as she unfolded it. There was only one sentence written. Stay away from Daniel. Alina's knees nearly buckled. Oh my God. Nathan grabbed the letter from her hands, reading it quickly. She knew something. And now she's gone. Alina's entire body was ice cold. Her mother had tried to warn her. She had tried to tell her something about Daniel. And now she had disappeared. Nathan exhaled sharply. We need to find out what's really going on. Alina clenched her fists. No, she wasn't just going to find out. She was going to end this. Alina could barely hear anything over the pounding in her ears. The apartment, her mother's absence, the chilling note, it all blurred together in a mess of fear and rage. Nathan grabbed her shoulders. Alina, listen to me. We will find her. But we need to think. If your father is behind this, we can't just run in blind. She jerked away from his grip. And what if she doesn't have time? What if her voice cracked and she swallowed the panic threatening to take over? What if I never see her again? Nathan softened. We won't let that happen. He held up the note. This means she knew something. Maybe she left us a clue. Alina scanned the apartment, her mind racing. A clue. Something her mother had left behind. Then she remembered the kitchen cabinet. She rushed to the small cabinet above the fridge, the one her mother always told her never to open. With shaking hands, she yanked it open. Inside, there was a small, worn notebook. She pulled it out and flipped through the pages. It wasn't a journal. It was filled with numbers, names, addresses. Then she saw it. A name that made her blood run cold. Daniel Carter. Her father's name. Beside it was a date. And underlined, in her mother's shaky handwriting, debt paid. But at what cost? Alina's breath caught. Nathan peered over her shoulder. What the hell does that mean? Alina turned the page, her heart slamming against her ribs. More notes. Fragments of sentences. He said it was just a loan. But now he wants something else. He knows about Alina. I should have told her. I have to protect her. Alina felt sick. She was hiding something from me. Nathan's expression darkened. Looks like your dad wasn't just helping her out of kindness. Alina clenched the notebook, her hands shaking. He never does anything without expecting something in return. Nathan grabbed his phone. We need to get to that address. Alina's eyes snapped to him. What address? Nathan flipped back a few pages and pointed to an address scrawled in the corner of a page. It's the only thing that looks like a location. Maybe it's where she went. Or where she was taken. Alina's blood burned with determination. Then we go. Nathan hesitated. Alina, if your father's behind this, we're walking straight into a trap. She met his gaze, her voice steady. Then let's make sure we're the ones setting it.